I'm Rob, and welcome to the Uncut Network. Every month we rotate between directors, actors, and super specific genres, and we cover everything from exploitation to things your parents will absolutely approve of, relative unknowns to household names, and everything in between. The Uncut Network is the movie podcast of all the niches that cover all of those things and more. I am joined by Andrew. Hello there.
Hello, Rob.
It's been a while. I think Fright Fest.
It has been a little while, yes.
One of the Fright Fest specials was the last time. I can't remember.
I think it was, yes. And I've enjoyed many other horror movies since then, but it's good to be back here with you.
A pleasure, thank you. Ben, who I guess is in a shot of being my co-host at this point. He's been on so many things with me.
Yeah, you're going to get people writing in going, oh God, not that idiot again. Oh, jeez.
People don't write into podcasts unless it's like household names.
Well, unless the email starts, well, actually.
You have no idea how accurate. You have no idea how accurate that is.
Hello,
by the
yes,
way.
thank you.
You really don't. And last but not least is James. Hello there.
Hi Rob, glad to be back. It's been since Jackie Chan? Was that last time? Or?
Yeah, Jackie Chan. Yeah, you've been on the year-end special, which was the other end of the recording with Graham, but yeah. The proper episode Jackie Chan with Police Story, which is, yeah, a cool movie that we did then.
Absolute masterpiece.
So, other movie that we did not so much, Who Am I? That was...
Well, it can't be all be winners.
It exists. This is part 2 of a Directors Uncut episode last week, or the week before, I should say. We did the Vengeance Trilogy of Park Chan Wook, but this time we're opening it up to more of his broader career. So, I guess just before we sort of address the Vengeance Trilogy, because I think it would be unfair to have that on that podcast, not allow any of you to have a word in edgeways. That'd be very, very unfair. But just general feelings on Park Chan Wook.
I was going to say, he is part of the holy trinity of South Korean films. I mean, all right, he was kind of born out of an era that was kind of supported by the quota, the Korean film quota, guaranteed in Korean cinemas of 146 days a year had to be dedicated to Korean films. So there was a need for content, and him, Bong Joon-ho and Kim Ji-woon really kind of came out of that as the big stars. I mean, you've got other song, guy who did The Housemaid, the remake. I remember his name at 2 o'clock.
Kim Ki-duk was also another.
I should have said Im Sang-soo. Oh, can we not?
I think he was another one who sort of benefited.
He was, but he was internationally, yes, but in home, not really so much. He was very much kind of seen as this art house director who kind of went out and made a name for himself internationally.
He certainly made a name for himself.
He definitely made a name for himself, especially amongst his actresses.
Yes, that was behind the documentary Ararang, wasn't it? How I think it was Breath, one of his actresses, was it Breath? One of his actresses nearly died with a stunt, like a stunt shot.
It wasn't. The big one came about with the way he treated people in Morbius. That was the really big one where everything kind of came out. And as soon as that came out, it was like a domino effect from there on in. But
Park Chan Wook, let's keep it upbeat and not talk about persona non gratas.
So yes, he's part of the Holy Trinity. I mean, you look at certainly one of his earlier films, wasn't his first film, but the first big film he did with JSA, which really put him on the map because Koreans don't half love a North-South divide movie, even if it's not very good. But yeah, no. So the Vengeance Trilogy, certainly internationally, Old Boy kind of opened the floodgates for Korean cinema. I mean, it wasn't the first Korean blockbuster. That was Shiri in 1998, I think. But yeah, it was kind of that first one internationally that really put Korean films on the map. I mean, there was people coming up to me. I mean, they knew I liked East Asian cinema anyway, but people going, "Oh, have you seen Old Boy?" I was like, have I seen Old Boy? Get out of it. But it was people who took no interest in it. It kind of had that crossover.
And in the interim, it's somehow become a film bro movie, which is an odd timeline, I guess.
No, it always was. It always was. It was just wasn't talked about in those kind of circles, and we didn't have labels for it.
But James, Andrew, feelings on Park Chan Wook? If Ben's left any stone unturned there, I'm not sure.
Sorry.
Love Old Boy, obviously. I like the whole Vengeance trilogy. I'd rank them Old Boy, then Lady Vengeance, and then Mr. Vengeance at the bottom for me. But I think it might depend a little bit on the order you see them in as well. That is the order I saw.
Fair. I mean, I saw Mr. Vengeance first, and I have very few memories of that beyond one character having green hair and a very lingeringly awkward final shot. But yeah, it's the lesser of that three. Absolutely.
See, I'm approaching this from an interesting vantage point. Now, obviously, Old Boy, I watched that when I was a teenager getting into films, and it just blew me away. And I sought out Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. I really like that. Lady Vengeance, I have not seen, admittedly. And I know I need to finish the trilogy. I have no reason not to, but for some reason, I just haven't. I'm a fan of director Park's work. I was actually excited for Stoker when it was coming out. Wasn't really too online, so I seemed to be the only person who seemed to be excited for that. But little did I know there were, I guess, film bros online who are hopeful for that. But yeah, I've just been impressed with a lot of his work.
Excellent. So the two movies we're going to be talking about tonight are representative of the other part of his career beyond the Vengeance trilogy, and those two movies are 2000. I mean, really bad with years here, so I will actually get them up.
2009, 2016.
Yes, The Handmaiden and First. So we'll start chronologically with First, which was a first-time viewing for me, and I realise I say those words really badly, and that's a confusing statement that I just said. but I own up to it. So first, who wants to take a swing at the synopsis for this one?
I'll give it a go. Okay, so First follows Sang-hyun, who is a priest that volunteers for an experimental procedure. It's hopes that it will lead to a cure for a deadly virus, but instead, the priest is infected, he dies, and a blood transfusion brings him back to life as a vampire, which is not what you expect from the NHS or...
Well, who knows where that blood comes from?
No, that's true.
Yes. And it just spirals out of control like any Park Chan-wook movie does, really, and quite a bleak, sort of fatalistic story, which seems to be his speed. So, Andrew, what are your thoughts on First?
I like First. To be honest, the first time I saw it, I wasn't so convinced. I couldn't really find a way into it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I get that.
Aesthetically kind of chilly, if that's the right word. I had trouble like latching onto it or finding a way into it emotionally. But on a rewatch, I really enjoyed it. It's technically not his first work of horror because he had the short Cut, which was part of the Three Extremes movie, about 3 years earlier, or let me double check that, 5 years earlier, which was all about a director character who comes home to find that an extra from one of his movies has kidnapped his wife and is threatening to kill her unless the director does certain things. So he had dabbled in horror previously, but this was his first horror feature. It's full of quite eye-grabbing imagery. There's I think it's a flute, which is used to sort of stab people with and draw blood out of them. And there's a lot of quite bold visuals with like white and off-white walls and floors and blood against that and so on. So it's it's a little bit alienating, but within that, it does get into quite a lot of themes to do with lust, desire, guilt, It's quite religious, with the main character being a priest. So it's got religious guilt in there as well. And it does something interesting with horror tropes. It doesn't stick to the tried and tested standard vampire movie tropes. Even for an Asian film, and there is a long history of Asian cinema be it in Korea or Japan, taking the standard Dracula-esque horror story and doing something a little bit different with them. Even within that Asian context, this is quite weird and strange, and I appreciate that. And it's got for me, an all-timer ending as well, quite bleak and kind of romantic at the same time.
So this was my second time watching this, and the first time I saw this, I did quite like it, but I was of the opinion that it was a lesser Park Chan Wook film, based on the rest of his filmography, what I'd seen at the time. And now, upon a rewatch, where I've almost seen all of his works, I feel I had been underestimating this, because I was really taken aback by the way you approached vampires, almost taking a grounded approach, avoiding more fantastical elements, like there's no fangs, no transforming a bat, and it seems like instead the vampirism is an excuse just for this central pair to shed the unsatisfying aspects of their lives and indulge in their worst desires. And I thought it was a really interesting approach, and I thought it was very well done, and I think it's really got terrific performances from the leads. And I gotta agree with Andrew, the ending is an all-timer, and it's just stunning stuff.
Yes, it's a very horny vampire movie. I know vampires are sort of synonymous with sort of sexiness and allure and all of this sort of stuff, but very often it's just sort of, ooh, look at that handsome man. Really, there's very few, without going back to sort of the 70s and 60s in the Euro horror phase, where the vampire movies were as horny as this, really, because it's the shackles that effectively off this Catholic priest, really, aren't they? Which is an interesting angle, I think. But Ben, feelings on first.
I mean, I was lucky enough to catch it the first time around. I was kind of there banging on the door of the showrooms in Sheffield, let me in, because it was the only place actually showing it. So I kind of went in and kind of looking back, because I've seen it a number of times over the years. This is probably one of the, for as much as people kind of point to the Vengeance Trilogy and films like that as being like the pinnacle, this is the most Park Chan Wook film that there is. You look back at his filmography, it's all about complex relationships between people. And what I like about Thirst, you take the vampirism out of this film and it still works. It's really got this idea of, you could have a toxic relationship or something born, a fall from grace on one side, and the birth of this narcissist out of another, and it still works. And so the vampirism is kind of just there as an aesthetic, and especially at the time, because round about that time, vampires were everywhere. I mean, we were at the height of the Twilight, or the Twiglet series, as I like to call it. Vampirism had kind of taken a hold of movies at that time, but this Thirst, it very much had that style that Park Chan Wook brings to it. As I say, there was a certain coldness, but if you look back at films like JSA, at the even I'm a Cyborg, but that's okay, they've all kind of got this coldness because it's trying to draw your attention away from the back and just focus on these two people. And this is why I kind of fit, and it fits into it. That theme will be brought up again later on, I am sure. For me as well, I had just seen a film with Kim Ok-vin in it, which was called Daisepo Naughty Girl. So I was kind of like, oh, I wonder what she's going to do next. What happened was her next role was Thirst, and she was 22 years old in this film when she made this. So, I mean, to give that kind of level of performance in that kind of film, and you see that kind of, that she's kind of very much in the background. She's downtrodden. She's been beaten. She's been, so all kinds of emotional abuse over the years.
Yeah.
And then you kind of see her grow, but actually what she grows into is something quite ugly, something quite horrible. And Yeah, no, I think it's absolutely brilliant. And Song Kang-ho, I mean, has he ever given a bad performance in anything? Ever? I don't think so.
No, he's one of the most consistent actors active, in my opinion.
So, yes, I like Thirst. Let's just put it.
It's the first time I've watched it though, so it's kind of a lot to take in, really, isn't it? It's a bold swing, even though it's an idea that allegedly he had from around the time he was planning JSA, so he was sat in this a while. The title apparently translates as Bat, so this is a curious entry into his filmography, I think. It's just a weird one to sort of grasp on a first viewing, isn't it? There's a lot to take in.
What I heard was that first, the idea that Park Chan-wook had for this film was basically priest becomes vampire, because that wasn't really ground touched upon. And a reason why, as Ben said, this film works so well without the vampire elements is because it was adapted from, well, I said inspired by a European novel by, I'll be honest, I'm not going to remember the name, or Erim Azolos. Google be a friend. I'm not going to help.
It's a good swing, isn't it?
But the novel it was based on was very much essentially the film, but without the character's not a priest and there's no vampire elements.
I didn't even know that. There you go. We learn something new every day. And yeah, no, but that totally makes sense. And that is very indicative of Korean directors kind of introducing Western ideas and notions into their films.
Yeah. Personally, I think it's his weakest film. I'm sorry if this is coming across as a...
Well, no, actually, what you're saying there, and this is kind of something I wanted to bring up earlier. I was going to ask you, what did you feel about it having... Because I take it you rewatched the Vengeance Trilogy for the other recording quite recently. And that was kind of very much the feeling at the time, was sort of like, oh, he's trying to recapture that old boy magic, but he's not pulling it off. And, you know, there was Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, there was I'm a Cyborg, but that's okay. And so people were kind of like, oh, he's a bit of a flop, isn't he? And it's sort of like, well, no, he's not. This is him. You go back and look at his filmography. So I was going to ask, sort of like, how did you feel comparing it to? No, and now I've got my answer.
I think Lady Vengeance is his best movie. So
no, I'd agree. That is probably my favourite of the Vengeance trilogy. I mean, it's right up there. Mr. Vengeance, Lady Vengeance. I do love. Old Boy has kind of lost some of its magic for myself, probably because of the whole movie bro thing. And so that's on me. That's not on the film. It's kind of like it's soured the taste towards it. Kind of like it soured the taste towards film, Fight Club, and things like that. You know, it's kind of like I'm not too sure I'm down with this anymore.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, would it be fair to say it's kind of the whole film bro thing is it's such a lauded statement, but it's tied in with toxic male masculinity,
like
so.
Which is so funny because Fight Club is a complete. What's the word I'm thinking? Oh, you know what? Old man brain is not working tonight.
It's a satire.
It's a complete parody of that. It's a satire. That was the word I couldn't think of. It's a complete satire of toxic masculinity, written by a gay American. I mean, come on, you know.
A problematic gay American,
but you know, well, he still writes good books, though.
Yeah, James, you said this is your second viewing. So, what was your feelings on the first? Was it sort of in line with my sort of confusion of it, really, I guess would be the word for it?
Well, my first viewing was, I want to say it was like 2017, 2016. I remember I watched it courtesy of a Film 4, and I seem to remember that I was a fan of it. I did dig what Park was attempting throughout, but I did feel that it was running a bit longer than it needed to at the time. And I'll be honest, that could be because when you're watching with so many breaks, it kind of extends it, because I watched on DVD today. No, it was yesterday. I watched it and on DVD, and I didn't feel that bloke personally. So I don't know.
To be honest, that's Korean cinema. It's an accusation thrown at all Korean cinema. It goes on 20 minutes longer.
Well, this is 2 hour and 20 minutes, so it is sufficiently long for what it is. And I think that was effectively my issue with it. It could have had a half an hour cut from the middle, which is usually where most movies struggle, but this especially, I think. Yeah, but it is, to go back to what Andrew was saying, it is incredibly cold. at the end when the house is painted white, that's very stark. I mean, I know it's just a white flat, but at the same time, it makes it feel very clinical, I guess is the word I'm looking for. The tone of the movie feels very clinical.
Yeah, it's a reflection of their emotion towards humanity, though. These are no longer people; they're food. So there has to be. You go into any slaughterhouse or anything like that, it is very clean. It is very cold.
It stinks. I
should explain that. Not that I visit slaughterhouses on a regular basis. I grew up on a farm, so it's kind of like, I kind of use the thing.
And just to clarify, I've had an interview at a slaughterhouse for sort of the back room and the sort of the office, and the smell will stay with you for life. It isn't like anything you've ever smelled before. It is gross.
Just didn't want people writing in and going, "Oh my God, you got a Leatherface on the podcast, quick!"
No.
I would love to hear everyone's favourite Asian vampire movies, and I'm going to say that mine is The Vampire Doll.
Okay, the Japanese film that looks like a Hammer movie. It was part of the Bloodsucker trilogy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first entry in the Bloodsucker
They
trilogy.
are quality films. It's like were they Toho for that? I don't think they were Toho films, were they? But it looked like they were sponsored by Hammer. At the same time, Hammer were doing cross promotions with Shaw Brothers, like the Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires and things like that. And this kind of looks like one of them where Hammer would turn around to Japan and went, do you fancy making some of our movies? Because it has that aesthetic to it. But yeah, no, that Bloodsucker trilogy is really good.
It does, but I'm not a huge fan of the Seven Golden Vampires, but I love the Vampire Doll. The other two are Lake of Dracula and Evil of Dracula, and they're both all right, but the Vampire Doll, I think, is head and shoulders above them. It's really good.
Oh, good shit.
A really weird one that I really chimed with, which doesn't sound like it's a vampire movie at all, but Gorky Body Snatcher from Hell was a bizarre movie about space vampires that had sort of very pointed political thing to say about, well, just geopolitics, really. It's not an upbeat movie.
I've just been keeping quiet because I've been trying to think of any that I've seen, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure if I've seen any more Asian vampires than first. So, by default.
It's not a rich sort of subject matter for Asian movies, really. Because beyond those few,
now you see I'm going to go into the realms of Hong Kong cinema, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say Mr. Vampire from 1985 with Lam Jing-ying. We've literally, I know we've just recorded a bunch of podcasts for the Patreon. Sign up to the Patreon, it's really good.
It doesn't feel like a vampire movie.
It's a vampire. It's literally called Mr. Vampire. What more do you want from it?
Things are called things.
But it's Lam Ching-ying. Anything he did was absolutely fantastic. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. But yeah.
It is. It's got some interesting facts about this one, though. Like, not just pulled these out of the Wikipedia, but it was the first major American financed Korean movie, sort of a co-production in that level. And it was the first bit of full male frontal nudity in a Korean movie, apparently.
Oh, yeah, you get to see Song Kang-ho's...
Song Kang Dick?
Yeah, Song Kang Dick. Well, I was going to say he's ding-a-ling. Oh, okay, yeah, well, go with Song Kang.
I think from Japan as well, you'd have to mention, though I haven't seen it myself, the anime Vampire Hunter D.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's lots of anime.
Yeah. I was going to say, then you got the oh God, what was the schoolgirl Blood Sea? But there's a load of.
It's a rarity in Eastern sort of mainstream, I guess you'd call this Eastern cinema, which makes you think how it was received over there, really.
Well, it did very well. It was one of the top grossing films of that. Yeah, I mean, in the top 10 because the way Korea measures its popularity is how many tickets are sold, how many audience members went. So it's not done on actual finances because different cinemas charge different prices throughout the country. So it is based on how many tickets were sold.
Makes sense, yeah.
But at this time, it was in the top 10 Korean films at that time. Remember, they were still under the quota at that point. I mean, all right, it had been halved at that point to 73 days, but it did very well for itself. But as I said, that Holy Trinity, they could release anything and it would be a hit. Especially at that time. I think that's kind of lessening now. I know Bong Joon-ho is still kind of revered, but certainly for those three, it's very much they can release anything and it would be successful in Korea.
Kim Ji-woon has sort of fallen off edge compared to the other two.
Yeah.
But the other two are basically household names on a global sort of world cinema sense. So that's no criticism of him. But yeah, I mean, it's just a struggle to really talk about this one, though, because, well, it is for me anyway.
Well, without going into spoilers or anything, yeah, it is difficult to talk about.
I mean, we can spoil it if you want. If there's anything particularly spoiler heavy that anybody wants to discuss, because we spoil the hell out of the Vengeance Trilogy, by all reckoning.
So, oops, hope nobody's listening to this and hasn't seen Old Boy.
I mean, everybody's seen Old Boy at this point who listens to the podcast about movies.
I mean, my fiance's seen Old Boy. My fiance's seen Old Boy, and she's not really one for international films. So, I mean, she never forgave me for showing it to her, but she's still seen it.
Because my ex was exactly the same. She actually turned around at the end of the film and went, "You never show me anything as sick as that, you bastard." Like, fair enough. But all right. I mean, we've all mentioned kind of the all-time ending. So if we're happy to spoil it, should we go into a bit about that?
Well, before that, I mean, it has some interesting, that could be taken the wrong way, sort of nightmare-esque sequences.
Oh, yes.
Because it is about sort of escaping the clutch of this loveless marriage, this abusive marriage. And the idea is he kills him and leaves him at the bottom of the ocean with a rock on his chest, which brings about some very, very questionable dream sequences.
Well, that's it. There is a dark humour, as there is with most Korean films. There's a dark humour running through the middle of this film that I thought was very funny.
It is. It's genuinely funny.
It is very funny. Like the moment with the mother in the chair and her blinking, which was hilarious. To them both having guilt over killing the husband, the idiot's son,
Kang-woo,
and leaving him at the bottom of the lake, and the way he kind of keeps inserting himself in the middle of them,
which is a very choice selection of words there, I guess.
Intentional.
Hey, who among us has never felt guilt over killing their ex that they appear during sex? Come on.
Not so much.
Yeah, it's a fun little sort of bit of jet black humour, which I think he gets away with, because usually when you say jet black humour, usually it means just cruel. But
true.
I don't think it's true of Park. It's both very, very silly and very, very dark at the same time.
Yeah, it's a sick look at it, but it's also a very humorous look at it. You know, and it's kind of, but also you see that guilt kind of hanging around the Song Kang-ho character throughout. I mean, the actions he makes to stop those people following him so we can have the conclusion is very intentional. I mean, it's absolutely horrible, absolutely abhorrent what he does, but it's a necessary action for him to be able to go off and do what he needs to do.
Yeah. So, James and Andrew, you talked about the all-timer of an ending, so what was it about that ending that really sort of stood out for you?
I just really like the existential bleakness of looking death in the eye and being like, right, this is it.
Yeah, it also has that sort of sense of humour about it too, where the mother is in the back seat, smiling as much as she can smile while that is happening.
But also the lead up to it as well, with the Kim Hong-vin character just kind of trying to find a hiding place to stay out of the sun. It's stuff. All right, they're vampires. They can't be in sunlight, and so they're on a cliff edge waiting for the sun to rise. And Song Kang-ho, he kind of accepts that no, actually, we need to die. We've turned into these absolutely terrible people. But she's like, no, I'm having fun. I need to go out. I need to do more of this. But he realised that
constantly calling him a coward.
Yeah, but she's also his responsibility because he turned her. out of his own desires, but now he's riddled with guilt and acceptance of this can't go on anymore.
Yeah. James, you're feeling an ending, sorry?
I quite liked how it's almost like trying to escape the inevitable. Like, death is coming, no matter what we do, it's still going to come. And the way it goes about it I feel there's shades of Looney Tunes in there, of just the futility of trying to escape this. And I think it's just the right tone as well, that after all the bloodshed, it's just a genuinely funny sequence of just the whole thing with the lid of the car boot. It just had me in big laughter, and I just thought it was very well done and a great way to send off the film.
You were going to say there, Andrew?
You can't go wrong with a murder-suicide by sunlight.
True.
Great way to end any film. And also, I like the strong sense of karma. Like, he created her, and then she's his undoing. Like, she represents his moral error incarnate. And I like that theme to it.
So to wrap up on first, is there anything that we haven't mentioned that any of you would like to bring up before?
Not really. I mean, the only thing I can really suggest is if you enjoy Kim Ok-min's performance in this, go and watch The Villainess. She's absolutely fantastic in that. Really good movie.
That's the same person. Well, she really disappears into roles.
No, she really does. I mean, she's on a TV show on Netflix at the moment, which she has been for the last couple of years. She's because K-drama's really taken off over the last sort of like 5-6 years.
It's keeping Netflix afloat, frankly.
K-drama, yeah.
With
yeah. Certainly in sort of like East Asia and things like that. But she's a fantastic actress. I mean, I wouldn't say go as far back as Daisepo Naughty Girls, which was her film debut. She'd done a few TV shows up until then, but no, The Villainess is fantastic.
You mentioned that twice now, so I think you need to say what that movie is.
Daisepo Naughty Girls
something.
is a Korean teenage sex comedy about this girl who is poor and she's trying to get finances, and she becomes this hostess, I suppose we would call it, a karaoke bar. But then she is brought into this world of this mob boss who actually likes to dress up as a teenage girl. But there's a whole thing going on at the school. There's like genetic engineering, there's transgenderism. There's all sorts of things going on in this school, and it ends up with a dance-off and a giant snake. Talk about symbolism.
I'd also say that if you're looking for the gothic in the work of Park, then as well as Thirst, which is in a traditionally gothic genre of vampire movies, you should definitely also check out Stoker.
Ooh, yes.
Which is slept on, I think, way too much. It got a mixed reception on release, which it didn't really deserve.
I love it. I love Stoker. Can't say enough good things about it. And it's got one of Nicole Kidman's best performances.
One of the angriest performances, at the very least.
Actually, on the back
and
of sorry, go on, James. Sorry.
I was just going to say, what makes it even more fascinating is that it was on a screenplay that Park Chan Wook adapted, and the screenplay was written by Wentworth Miller, who was the lead in Prison Break.
It was.
That's still bizarre to this day.
I know.
And was also in which Resident Evil film was he in? Was it 4 or 5? Is it one of them?
They all bleed into each other.
I watched them all back to back a couple of years ago, and now it's one big long movie. But if we're talking about Park Chan Wook, and you really want to get into something kind of different and really interesting, he did the TV series Little Drummer Girl with Florence Pugh. That was fantastic.
Was that the one he did for the BBC?
I think it was a BBC co-production, but yeah.
It's funny how he's working in TV now, because he's also got the thing with Apple TV coming out later in the year.
Well, that's where Kim Ji-woon is as well. He did Dr. Brain. Was it Dr. Brain, Mr. Brain? Dr. Brain for Apple.
For Apple TV, yeah. James, any final thoughts on First?
I don't know if I have anything to add, really. I just think if you haven't seen this one, then hopefully we haven't spoiled too much. But if we have, just come on, we should have enticed you. Hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, can't say fairer than that, really.
There is one other thing I wanted to say, which is Park wrote this or co-wrote this with his longtime co-writer Seo-kyeong, and I think he's co-written, I think this is right, every movie he's made since Lady Vengeance with her. And I think it's probably not a coincidence that at that point, from that point on, he gets a lot more interested in female points of view with this particular female longtime co-writer working on pretty much every project. So Lady Vengeance, I'm a Cyborg and That's Okay, First, The Handmaiden, and Decision to Leave, all co-written with her. And if you get a chance to check out some of the other things she's written outside of her work with him, a lot of them are also very good. Just from a couple of years ago, there was a film called Little Women, which is a kind of conspiracy mystery drama movie about money and the rich and powerful in Korea, which is a big theme in contemporary Korean cinema is inequality and the corrupt rich. So that's worth checking out if you can get your hands on it.
You like balloon animals? What's his favourite animal?
Monkey.
No, fuck that. You can have sausage dog, snake, or giraffe.
Snake, please, Mr. Jolly.
Jelly.
So that brings us to the point of the show where we pick who's going to be coming up in the upcoming episode. And we are back around to the Actors Uncut Cycle. And the theme for this next upcoming duo of actors, I thought fan favourites, ones which is a lot of interest in. And so the first one, you think, who could that be, Rob? Who could that be? It could be anybody from the entire history of movies all over the world. But my co-hosts, I love that bunch of weirdos. So one of the most popular people is Reese Shearsmith. Entire history of movies, and we're going with Reese Shearsmith as one of the most popular actors on the call sheet.
He's a really good actor.
How on brand. Yeah.
He's wonderful. Yeah, absolutely.
He's wonderful.
Perfect for this episode, of course.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, I've not mentioned In the Earth yet, and that's because we haven't picked any Nigel Neal things, and we didn't end up picking the Stone Tape. So, if we did, I would have brought up In the Earth, because it is very close in spirit, and
it's effectively a remake,
wonderful.
Isn't it? It's just science
basically.
and spooky shit in the woods.
Yeah. And for record, if I end up on that episode, chances are we will end up mentioning In the Earth. So I will not say anything more just in case, because
we have done it before, so we couldn't double dip on In the Earth. That was
can't double dip. In that case, it rules. It's about playing synthesizers to trees. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
But it's kind of funny with Reese Shearsmith, because he's so well known for TV, you kind of have to include the TV. So I'll be pushing heavily for the League of Gentlemen Christmas special, because that scared the shit out of me as a kid.
That's
valid.
That's good.
Yeah. The Papa Lazarou bit in the church, it just scared the hell out of me when I was young. Oh wow, did it.
And somehow, like, the second most terrifying thing that Reese Shearsmith has done. Because Inside Number 9 pulled an episode, a live episode, which changed my life.
Yeah. There are some very scary Inside Number 9 episodes. Their Christmas episode is petrifying.
I'm so far behind on that. I think I'm only at season 3, so I think if I'm a next sort of watch-along TV show.
They've done 2 Christmas episodes at least, and both are chilling.
Is the Christmas episode the one where it's basically like it's somebody talking over a Christmas special from years ago, and it seems like a fairly pedestrian one, and it seems to be going fine, and then oh no, here's a twist.
It's kind of the silly, funny, wacky one. The silly, funny, wacky one where they parody British TV, and it ends on an absolute brown note, which recontextualizes everything, and it's just the most horrifying thing.
But his movies is a weird place to talk about, because he's not super prolific in movies, but he is super prolific in theatre and TV.
He's one of those guys.
Yeah.
I suppose this is where the sort of fan favourite label comes in, because he's one of those guys where he's not going to be in a ton of movies, but every time you see he's in a movie, you're like, right, good, I know what that's going to be like.
Yeah.
Because he's basically Rent an insane person because he has that brilliant ability to just do manic performances. Not just manic for the sake of manic, but he's a really well considered, well acted out in everything he does. He's one of our great actors.
Yeah, and of course, he's currently being... Oh wait, just bumped my microphone, just going to turn that around. He's currently, of course, being talked about because he's playing a role in the 2000 AD Rogue Trooper film. Which was recently announced. Yes, he's playing Bagman.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad that's moving forward, because that's Duncan Jones, isn't it? And
yeah, Duncan Jones
has needed a break.
Yeah, officially announced very, very recently what the cast of that was going to be.
Oh, I'm really happy about that.
I'm really happy about that.
I think with Ray Smith, though, I think we might have to break the formula a bit and talk about some TV, because we can't do that movie that he did with Danny Dyer in the woods about a bad sort of workers' retreat thing. We can't do that. I can't do a Danny Dyer movie on this podcast. I just can't.
I don't think he's in Severance.
Is he not? I can't remember him being in it.
He's not. He's in a bunch of other things.
Ah, The Cottage. I'm thinking of The Cottage.
The Cottage. And The Cottage isn't very good. Sorry.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's a bold stab, but yeah.
I think we have to do some TV, honestly, for that one.
Yeah.
Which I'm okay with. Yeah. So,
but the challenge is working out which Ben Wheatley film to do, because his collaborations with Ben Wheatley are all spectacular.
Oh yeah, they are truly something.
In the
Field in England.
Is that
in High Rise?
Oh, he is in High Rise
as well.
Yes, he dies with a TV on his head.
He does. Yes.
Oh, people hated
he's the
High
dentist.
Rise. I absolutely love High Rise, but people hated that.
I love High Rise. It's wonderful. People just didn't get that.
Yeah.
High
Rise is, I think, the most League of Gentlemen film that he's been in. That is basically like a feature-length version of that season 2 subplot where Jeff Tibbs gets lost on the training weekend.
I mean, to be fair, I feel that in England it's about people getting lost going to the pub, and then it results in Rhys Smith screaming with a pistol in his hand, stuffing mystery mushrooms into his face from the ground. So that's pretty League of Gentlemen as well.
Fair, yes.
Yeah.
And he'd ring up, leave messages. Hello, Steph. Want to speak to Steph. And I don't know why, but we thought it was a funny thing, so we... I got this Hoover belonging to you. Why are you laughing?
So, that leads us to the second film of this week's episode, which is 2016's The Handmaiden. And whoever's taken a stab at the synopsis for this, good luck, because, well, there's a lot to it, I guess, is the easiest way to sum that up. But The Handmaiden, who wants to give that
Go on. It was definitely a Mexican. James is kind of like, well, I did the last one. I don't have to do this one.
How did you know?
It's right. Okay. This one is about deceit, and it kind of ties into the class system that we would see later on in Parasite and things like that. It is very much a thing within Korean society. So you got this lowly family who are approached about trying to con a Japanese family out of their wealth. You know, he was this very handsome man was going to woo the wife of the daughter of somebody who's died recently but was in the care of their uncle, but he was looking to marry so he could get his hands on the fortune. Very convoluted from that point of view. So from there, basically they're drawn in, and then it becomes a game of deception between our three main characters, primarily the titular handmaiden and the object of the con.
Better than I would have managed, because it does go all over the places. It's broken up into very literal acts, where the first one will present it from one perspective, and it'll double back and do it from another perspective. So it's definitely a movie that rewards multiple viewings, just to sort of have all your ducks in a row, so to speak.
Can I just start? Which version did everybody watch? Was it the extended version or the theatrical cut?
For this one, I watched the theatrical cut, but I have seen both cuts before, so I just opted for the theatrical release, I guess.
I saw theatrical on my first watch and extended on my second. And to be honest, couldn't immediately tell you what the differences were when I saw the extended cut.
Yeah, it's not obvious. There's a couple of things, especially with the flashbacks, kind of jumbled around, but it's not that. And some of these scenes are extended, but it's not immediate. Yeah, no, I watched the theatrical cut for this viewing because I'm a big believer in that's the director's cut. That's the one you release to the audience. You live with it.
Yeah, I mean, he's not Ridley Scott, so he's very final in his cuts. The only time when it's not really went his way was Lady Vengeance. He wanted the fade to black and white cut, which is an excellent sort of decision, which was taken away from him slightly. But
yep,
yeah. James, what's your feelings on The Handmaiden?
So I remember watching this one back in 2016 as part of the Bath Film Festival, and I just remember the anticipation because like, oh, it's a new Park Chan Wook film. I'm so ready for this. And then I just remember coming out of the screening just absolutely blown away by what I saw. And in all honesty, 8 years and multiple viewings later has not changed that. I think this is one of my favourite films from Director Park, and I think it's just so stunning in how each part builds upon the last, fleshing out the story, giving further shades and revealing the duplicitous natures to some characters. And I think it's just so very phenomenally done. And I think it has one of the greatest expressions of love that I've seen on cinema. It's people who love their books are going to be shocked and appalled, but I think it's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, because the thing that Ben didn't mention in the synopsis is a big part of the character interaction with the uncle and what he's got going on at this mad mansion, which is a mix of Japanese and English architecture in the middle of nowhere in Korea, is this library. And it's not like a library of the classics. It's a library
it's erotic fiction around the world.
Like Marquis de Sade is referenced at one point, so it's very kinky posh boys in this one.
And the whole thing with the uncle is to make her, the lady Hideko, to read it. But it's all very part of, I can't remember the Japanese tradition where it's kind of like done as a reading done like theatre kind of thing, where you have an audience there.
It's in a kwaidan, sort of the like musical accompaniment and telling a story, almost a song structure. Also, if you haven't seen kwaidan, you should totally watch it. It's one of the best Japanese horror movies, full stop, I think. But, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, don't be put off by the runtime of that film because it is broken down into individual stories, so take your time with it.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
But, Andrew, feelings on the Handmaiden?
I love it, and it's my favourite of his movies. Number one, I love the tricksy puzzle box structure, and this is why I'm intrigued as to what the differences are between the two versions, because, of course, when you watch it for a second time, you already know what the plot is and what the secrets are, so you're less sensitive to the revelations because you're anticipating them. So I am interested to know how those revelations are scattered throughout the movie, and if they come earlier or later in the extended version, I'm not sure.
Those kind of parts are very much the same. They are very much the big revelation. It still comes. I mean, it's a little bit longer because some of the thing. It's more about the background story to the Suki character and kind of like her background. So you're not quite sure of her kind of motivation in all of this. So it's more that kind of thing from there. But yeah, it's the structure is still the same.
I think I preferred the extended version, to be honest. I remember enjoying the movie even more than I had previously on the second watch. But you only get one chance to be trying to solve the riddle or trying to second guess what's going to happen. So any first watch is going to have that going for it. But anyway, I love that aspect, the tricksy twists and turns, but I also love the romance of it. Like, I want these people to succeed. When certain things happen late in the day, you're sort of metaphorically punching the air, going, as the saying goes, "Let's go, lesbians, let's go."
Yeah, and that was the thing that. What did it gather controversy at the time of release? Because it does have lesbian sex scenes, and as was always going to be the case when it's shot by a man, it can be quite male gazy, I guess is the term which is bandied about.
It can, and it is on a first watch or a superficial watch. It looks like the kind of movie that would open itself up to those criticisms. But I've had plenty of queer and gay women say they really dig it. So I wouldn't. It's not my place to criticize it, nor criticize it from that perspective. But I pass on what I hear. I've heard that I've heard some people say that scissoring is kind of overplayed from a male perspective. That's not necessarily the most common thing to get up to in bed. But again, I can only say I've heard plenty of women say they found it super sexy. And from a personal perspective, I love the tooth filing scene.
Oh yes,
Most erotic tooth filing. It's a very odd scene.
Yeah, it is, but it's also from a caring, loving perspective as well. Especially with the revelations that come later, then it kind of becomes more apparent that this wasn't just about. Because at that point, are we going into deeper kind of?
Well, it's one of the. It's.
Yeah,
I don't think he's a director who's a slave to the twist, like a lot of people are. But yeah.
No, but that revelation at the hour, round about the hour mark, it kind of, even though the hints are there, that's kind of what's going on. It's very much you get to that point and you're not going, oh, then there's an issue. I think you need to go away and have a long, hard think about yourself, because that moment, that revelation, and I'll kind of get more into that later, but it's about those intimate moments, those close moments where he's coming out of a genuine place. That moment was because she was in pain. It wasn't because I need to try and get you to love me more, or the long con or anything like that. It was very much sort of like a very intimate, very caring scene.
Yes. Seen it twice now, and I don't know how many times other people have watched it, but does it ever a sense of clarity about the proceedings? Because it is genuinely, as Andrew said, it's a puzzle box, and it's not one of those puzzle boxes. I mean, it does have little scenes where it tells you what's happening, but at the same time, it's done in such a clever, non-linear way that it's not like, say, a Knives Out where it has a scene at the end where it explains all the P's and all the Q's, and it's. But yeah, does it piece together better the more you watch it, I guess is the question I'm asking here.
I think there are some threadings. You can see the threadings together if you rewatch it, understanding where it goes and what direction. And this show viewing of mine, it was just little bits. It's like when the Count first meets Hideko, he at the table he calls her stunning, and she says something like, "Oh, men only say that when they want women to get out their tits." And then when later on he's with the former maid, Junko, trying to conspire to get her fired, I just noticed how he calls her stunning before ripping off her top and showing her tits to the camera. And it's just little things like that where you can see it all, the puzzle pieces fitting together, which makes it a bit more clear, I find.
Because it is effectively a mystery movie, much in the same way that the movie he followed this up, I've got the timeline right, A Decision to Leave, because it was a few years between those two, but yeah, it's a mystery too for...
What I'd say as well, on the back of that, because James makes a great point there, also watch Lady Hideko's Gloves. They tell their own story.
How many times have you seen it to pick up on that sort of detail?
Sorry, no, but her choice of gloves kind of very much reflects it. And the only time you really see her barehanded is when Suki's being taken away. And then you see she puts on the gloves again. She turns around to the Count and says, "Right, I'm hungry." And then they go off from there. But she puts on the white gloves, very much doesn't want that kind of contact, or they represent a mood. But that is her at her most vulnerable at that very moment, until the very end, spoiler, where the gloves and the mustache and the ring go into the ocean.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Maybe I think too much about it. Maybe I'm projecting something here, but that it's kind of that story is representative of her her entrapment up until that point.
Yes. because her entrapment is from her. It's not one of his more despicable characters. Very presence is just he's just a horrible character, I think is the easiest and most simple way to put it. This guy who's the uncle, with his book collection and constantly got a black tongue.
Are you talking about the uncle, or are you talking about the count? The uncle. The uncle.
Yeah, he's he's a dirty old man.
Yeah, no, he's a pervert. He is absolutely. He gets off on erotic fiction that his niece reads to an audience, but he's collects the very rarest books. So yeah, it is. I mean, he's kind of very single focused. He doesn't make a secret about what he wants. He doesn't make. And the threat of the basement is always there. You'll go back down. That's kind of
the Mandela effect, isn't it? How you remember it differently than it actually happened.
So he's very open.
Yes.
I remember there being an octopus in this movie.
It does appear.
I know it's implied, but I actually physically seeing it. And
yes, in the basement.
Well, I've misremembered this movie on 2 occasions.
Yes, in the basement.
But
yeah, no. The Count is. Again, spoiling the movie. The Count is in the basement at the end with the octopus behind the uncle, and yeah, it's more of a visual thing of whoa, hang on, but it kind of plays into a scene from a page from one of the books, which kind of taps into that whole Japanese
and it's
tentacles
of his movies
kind of idea.
Surprisingly, it's not particularly violent either, because that is a sort of a reputation that he got as sort of nasty, violent movies, and it's all basically contained in one scene towards the end, really, which is probably making it one of his more accessible movies. I'd go as far to say, because his movies go to some dark places when it goes to the violent interactions that he has.
Right. Can I ask a question? Did anybody pick up the actress that connects the two films we're covering today?
No.
At all?
No.
Right, okay. Kim Hae-suk, the head house lady who kind of introduces the Seo-kyeong character right at the beginning and things like that, that was the mother from Thirst.
Oh.
Mrs. Ra.
What's her name? Mrs.
No, I mean the name in First.
Was a Japanese
First
name.
Is
the white-haired older woman.
Yeah.
Oh, right, in Thirst, yes, yeah.
He does that a lot, I mean...
The mum character.
Sorry, James, go on.
Just going to say there is another connection, because these two films are Park Chan-wook both adapted them from European novels and gave his own twist by infusing them with
the
Korean
Fingersmith
sensibilities.
In the case of this one. I think that's the title. Yeah. He does that a lot, really, throughout his body of work. Consistent actors. He will use the same people over and over again, and once upon a time, when you watch these originally, you think the industry in Korea is very small. But no, he just has this repository of actors that he really enjoys using again and again, really.
I mean, some of these people are big stars in their own right. Like Jung-woo, who plays the Count, he's a massive star in Korea. I mean, you go through his filmography, I'm just trying to think, because the only film I can think of right now is this ski jumping film from like 2006. It's called Takeoff.
Was that really?
He was the bad guy in The Chaser. He was in The Yellow Sea.
In The Chaser? Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. He is aged in a very sort of surface way in this.
And that's it, because now you see him in this, you go back and you watch films like The Chaser and things like that, and you're like, oh, I recognise it. It's like me watching Hong Kong cinema all the time going, hang on a minute, I remember him from... And then you kind of go through...
Well, it's like that meme, isn't it? The Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, meme. Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, he was in a great film called Nameless Gangster, which didn't get enough love, but that's for another time.
Yeah. Well, Korean gangster movies, very uniform, I guess, be the best way to describe them.
Which also...
Very consistent plots between each of them.
Well, that also stars Choi Min-sik, who was Old Boy, of course.
So have any other thoughts on The Handmaiden in general?
Brilliant. It is just absolutely fantastic. It's probably, for as much as Thirst is the most Park Chan-wook film, I think if you take it, but that's kind of like an average throughout his career. if you take all the elements he covers, all the things he likes to cover and discuss, Thirst is probably the most Park Chan-wook film there is. This is his best film. And I mean that not necessarily my favourite, but definitely his best, his most accomplished film to date, by far.
Well, as far as... I'm not sure about acclaim or level of acclaim, but I think Decision to Leave did better than this sort of international reception.
From what I heard, The Handmaiden, it's still revered. I mean, what, we're 8 years since it's released? To 2016, was it?
Yes.
And it's still kind of revered. It's you look at the cover of Decision to Leave from the director of The Handmaiden and Old Boy. You know, so it's still kind of, Old Boy still has that power. The Handmaiden still has that power. I don't think 5 years from now, many people will be talking about Decision to Leave. They will be talking about this.
Okay. Well, and Old Boy, because that endures eternally. For some reason, I don't know. It's very horror. It's a horrible movie, let's be honest.
But it's unlike...
If you watch that too much, I worry for your mental health, honestly, because that is a dark...
It is, but
film.
it's so unlike anything people, certainly in the West, people had seen at that point. So 2003 Old Boy came out, and people really hadn't seen it. The nearest comparison people had was Pulp Fiction. You can't really compare the two, but that was the nearest comparison people had at that time. Or I always remember, it's like a messed up Pulp Fiction. It's sort of like, and if you're saying the words messed up Pulp Fiction to describe a movie, then how messed up can it be?
James, any other thoughts on The Handmaiden?
Well, I don't really know what to add. I mean, I think it's just very well crafted in how this puzzle box opens up and reveals itself bit by bit, and how you get to know these characters, and like how Lady Hideko initially seems, I believe Suki calls her dense, but when you get to see from her point of view, you see the horrible past that she's had to go through, this horrific upbringing she had from a creepy uncle, and it just feels like a film which rewatches can only help grow appreciation for it and unlock further corners of this puzzle box. I just think it's exceptional stuff, and this is very much, if you say to someone you need to watch Park Chan-wook, this seems like the best recommendation for a first timer, because as good as Old Boy is, it might put off some people, let's be honest.
Yeah, you might lose a friend if you recommend them that. Yeah. I mean, a thing that we haven't talked about in this, just a final point, is the use of language. It's both Japanese and Korean, and it's employed in some very sly ways, I feel. Especially when the talk of dense. There's just something about swearing in Korean that just feels very funny in this movie. I don't know if it's fair in saying that. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's just me. But Andrew, any other comments on The Handmaiden?
I just think it's a slice of magic, and there's no greater compliment that you can pay to a movie.
Absolutely. So to wrap up on the director, how can we word this? We can't really talk about the legacy because it's still an enduring one. So how should we tackle this, I guess?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, if for someone who wants to get into Korean cinema, I think it's kind of important. He would be at the very beginning, I say Bong Joon-ho, Park Chan-wook, the kind of on the artier side, especially since the quote slash in 2006. And I know I've mentioned it to you, Rob.
Just to separate that. I mean, what we talked about in the last show, as far as the style, I think around the time the quarter slash was done, it's finished. His movies
changed a lot of things within Korean cinema,
which rawer and more.
I was going to say they become probably more commercial focused because you went from having films like Old Boy and Lady Vengeance to having My Girlfriend is an Agent, And
Yeah.
you know, films like all the Thieves, which was a massive hit in Korea. These more populist kind of movies. So I think with regards to especially sort of like that golden era of Korean cinema between 98 and 2005, he's difficult to ignore.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important that certainly either the Vengeance Trilogy or is there as kind of a gateway to Korean cinema, because it also has, whilst it has a lot of Korean sensibilities, it's open enough to, and so well made and so well told, that it can lead kind of further down the line to very Korean films like Seo-kyeong and things like that.
Before he was a filmmaker, he was a critic, which is, well, it was news to me, really. I mean, there's common threads there between the Korean New Wave in that sense and the French New Wave, because they mostly came from critics, or were critics in a previous life. And it's just a little bit of commonality, I feel.
Well, I mean, that's quite common in Korean cinema, though. Like Lee Chang-dong, who made some absolutely wonderful films like Poetry, Oasis.
Well, he was an ex-minister for the government. So, yes.
He was Minister of Art. Yeah.
Which is probably a good way to go about it. Somebody who's actually an artist to be in the Ministry of Art.
Well, it guarantees funding, doesn't it? It's no matter what you do, it's not like you're going to get your film first funded.
So to wrap up my thoughts on Park, I don't know what people felt about Decision to Leave. I thought it missed the mark a little bit, though the reviews seemed to be as strong as they were for any of his other movies, but it didn't quite land for me somehow. On the other hand, I need to balance it out with a positive opinion, which is his short movie Judgment, aka Simpan, is available on YouTube. It's from 1999, all in black and white. I don't know whether you'd really class it as a horror or not, but it's a weird little offbeat thriller with a nasty edge, and there's no better way to spend 26 minutes. Highly recommended.
He has a decent number of shorts that scatter his career. It seems he's one of the few sort of high profile he is very, very high profile at this point in his career, who still regularly does short movies, whether it's part of an anthology. Was he part of the Tokyo anthology, or was that Bong Joon-ho?
No, it's Bong Joon-ho.
But yeah, Night Fishing, and I think he did one around 2022. We haven't got his listing up, but he's constantly at it.
He's done shorts. He's done shorts for like iPhone, advertising the latest iPhone. I think it was the iPhone 10 when that came out. He shot a short film on the iPhone.
But yeah, he's very reflexive for his time, because there's a lot of directors of his generation who are film only and 16mm only and this only, but he a bit more brave and audacious, I think, with what he does. But James, sort of summing up feelings on Park Chan-wook.
I would say Park is one of my favourite directors working. I think he's just such a fascinating vision, and it just feels like whatever he turns his hands to is something that's at least somewhat interesting. Like Decision to Leave is, I would say, a lower tier work in his filmography, but I feel there was enough in there to just really hold my interest, and he does really well with especially just conveying relationships and just across the two films we have today that we've discussed, I feel they are very interesting approaches in quite different circumstances, to say the least. But also, one thing I don't think gets talked about enough with Park is that he is quite confident with his handle on comedy. He doesn't need to laugh a minute films, but
yes,
it's just that ending in First, and then you got in The Handmaiden when Suki finds out about the duplicity at the tree, and then she just reacts like, "What the fuck?" and is just such a sudden moment that really takes me off guard with how funny it is, and I think he's just a fantastic filmmaker, and I mean, he's got that HBO TV series, mini-series coming out, limited series, sorry, coming out with Robert Downey Jr. in like 4 different roles or something. And I'm not really a TV kind of guy, but I'm really interested in seeing that. Because it's Park. I'm just very interested, and he's an interesting guy.
It's curious to think whether he has an actual. I don't know what the genre. I mean, he's done a film before, JSA, but apparently he basically wants its existence wiping from the earth. He doesn't want anything to do with it. But yeah, he's got a gift for comedy, because looking at Old Boy, I mean, that scene where Odesu basically has a breakdown, it goes from being very, very funny to just horrible and unwatchable because of what he's doing. But it makes you wonder with what he's learned over the years whether he's got another comedy in him. But maybe he does. I'm not sure.
I think it would be hard for him now just to do a straight comedy.
Yeah,
I think, but this is it.
A Will Ferrell movie or something.
You take something like Na Hong Jin, because Na Hong Jin's an interesting one as well. He kind of done The Chaser, The LSC, and The Wailing a few years back. He
also wrote The Medium as well, which I think is a great bit of fan footage.
Absolutely bonkers movie. Yeah. But he's kind of learning that trick with the comedy. You look at The Wailing, that's the first time you really see him injecting comedy into his films. Kind of thing, and so
it's still bleak as all hell.
It is, but it's very indicative of Korean cinema, though. Even there's a really good film actually. If you liked things like The Handmaiden, there was a good, or probably better comparison would be Thirst. Was a film called Beast Clawing at Straws a few years ago, 2020 I think it was. It's available on Amazon Prime, I think. And that's a really, really solid. But again, it kind of has all those introductions. It's very darkly comedic, but it's also a bit of a caper movie, but it's also got a revenge element to it. They love throwing together all these disparate genres and kind of seeing what comes out in the mix. They're not controlled. They're not like, you're a comedy director, you're a horror director, you're a drama director. They're not constrained in the same way.
And that is where a lot of people have problems with Korean cinema. They call it a tonal mess. Is a phrase which is thrown around for a lot of this stuff, but
that's a shame, because as I say, the more as long as it works, who cares what it is?
Yeah, and way to get into that speed, that headspace. I think Park is probably the best example.
Yeah, no, and this is why I say
think he is more consistent. I do think he's more consistent than Bong Joon-ho, but that's just a personal opinion.
All right, I think Bong Joon-ho is probably the safer director. You're always going to get something quality. You're not going to have something as shocking as as director Park. Kim Ji-woon is all over the place in every movie.
Either a genius or an idiot.
Yeah, he's very. I suppose my nearest Western comparison would be like a John Carpenter kind of thing. When he's good, he's brilliant.
Yeah, that's fair.
But he does have the misfire every now and again.
Like A Tale of Two Sisters is one of the best horror movies of the past 20 years, in my opinion.
Fantastic movie.
If it is actually that old, I'm not sure if it fits in that 20 years still.
What was the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie you did? The Last Stand.
Oh yeah.
Well, less said about that one. But you kind of get the impression he was a director for hire on that one. But yeah, no, Director Park is one of those. As I said earlier, if you're looking to get into Korean cinema, I think it's a very good idea for him to be forefront, if not the very beginning.
You might want to have a gentle chaser to go with that law. So somebody who isn't quite so...
Well, I always say Memories of Murder is the best film to start with, regardless, which is the Bong Joon-ho film. You know, start with that and then move on to your Old Boy or things like that, because you get a lot of dark things, but also the comedy with it as well.
Yeah, and I mean, that was probably that and Shiri were my introductions. So,
as I say, Shiri was the first Korean blockbuster. So,
yeah. So I think that calls it a wrap, really. So Andrew, where can we find you online?
You can find me online at whitlockandpope.com or on Twitter. I refuse to give it its new name on Twitter at Whitlock and Pope. And I'll wrap up by saying, if you want to go see some old school Korean genre films, I recommend The Handmaid, not The Handmaiden, but The Handmaid, and The Spiral Staircase.
What, the 1960
Either of
Kim
those.
Ki-young film, or are we talking about the Im Song-soo reimagining from 2010?
The 1960 Kim
Yeah,
Ki-young.
there was one from the 80s, which was one of the earliest Korean movies I've seen. Something in the Night.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's-
I know which one you mean. Oh, God. I've already got it in the other. I know which one you mean. Sort of like Suddenly in the Dark or something like that.
Yeah, it's got like so many different titles. It's another sort of psychosexual sort of horror movie, which is more fun than it sounds.
Suddenly in the Dark from 1981.
Yeah.
Or Suddenly at Midnight.
James, yourself, where can we find you online?
So if you want to find me, my website where I write reviews for is at thereviewingrodders.co.uk. I'm on the various social medias at roddersj04, that's spelled with 2 Ds. I also write regularly for nerdly.co.uk. And if we're doing recommendations for Korean films, I recommend Project Wolf Hunting.
Which has more blood than every movie ever. It's very gratuitous.
It's so good.
I love Project Wolf Hunting. I should also say, by the way,
Yes,
not The
I
Handmaid,
knew
but The
you.
Housemaid. I always get that wrong. The Housemaid from 1960, yes, Kim Ki-young.
And Ben, and if you're going to recommend Korean movies,
I'll keep it to one, don't worry.
Yes.
I won't be here all day. I am the Kamereig Samurai, pretty much everywhere. CYMREIG Samurai, pretty much everywhere. I've got a different way of saying what Twitter is now called. It's basically because X in Chinese has a sh sound to it, so it's actually now called shitter, as far as I'm concerned.
they're certainly owned by a shitter. Yeah.
Yeah, well. So, yes, you can find me on Shitter, all the places, Kamereig Samurai, Letterboxd, and I write for The Geek Show. I seem to be the East Asian film correspondent there of the moment, even though James did steal a recent review.
This again?
Chance to review something off me. Yes, this again. I'm still bitter. I'm still bitter. No, I'm looking forward to reading what your thoughts on it, so...
And a Korean movie recommendation? Just
a
to keep the
Korean
theme?
movie recommendation. I'm gonna Imkwon Takes Seopyeonji. It used to be part of the Korean Film Archive on YouTube. Go to that. It's loads of really old Korean films there. But
Yes.
Seopyeonji really is a tale of the tradition, the loss of tradition, against the modernization of Korea. Done in the mid-90s, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Excellent. And you can find me across our social media as Uncut Robcast as well. And as Ben mentioned earlier, we have a Patreon, and we're in the middle of a Mr. Vampire series, which has its very high highs and its incredibly low lows. But I mean, that's true of any long-running franchise, really, isn't it?
Are you saying Hong Kong cinema is a bit inconsistent?
Never say such a thing.
I will. It's very inconsistent.
Yeah. But yeah, we were in the middle of a series of that, and I think we've got 2 more to go. Which
Yep, we've got
Vampire,
which are
and-
not technically Mr. Vampire films, but they're still considered part of the franchise by fans.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like if we ever do Female Prisoner Scorpion. I think there's 2, maybe 3 separate versions of that. It's not that sort of level of detail that we'll go into.
Oh yeah, even Miko Keiji bailed out on those films.
Yeah,
At like number 4 or something like that. So
we know when to call it quits. So check that out. A link will be in the description. But until next time, when we will be doing Grace Shearsmith in a change to the formula, an actors episode that will include TV shows, because he's got a lot more of a stable in his filmography and his body of work in TV than he does in movie. And some of his movies are awful. He's got a few good ones, but some really, really bad ones too. So yeah, that will be the next episode. Until then, thank you for listening.